Hey, what's up and welcome. Matthew here, the designer and developer. This is my YouTube channel, Coded Design, where I teach coding and user interface design. Let's continue with our TypeScript course. In this video, we are going to take a look at union types in React. Now, there are cases whereby there are many possibilities, not only one type. Up to this far, we've been dealing with one type, okay? Meaning that it's either going to be a string or an array of object, but we never dealt with a situation whereby we are not sure which type is it going to be. If you want an example, let's just jump straight into it. Let's say on this page, okay, on our main page, we need, when it's loading, okay, it needs to fetch some data from the API, and then after that it needs to set that data. Let's say we are not sure the type of the data, so meaning that it's either it's the shape that we want or the structure that we want, or it can be null. As you can see, maybe in case of there's an error while fetching data from the API, let's say the internet just cuts off, it might return null. But if the internet connection has been successful, it might give us the data that we want. So as you can see that there are two possibilities, the data that we want or null. So there are two options. And in solving that problem, we are going to use union type. So let's just quickly create some sort of a fake way, or some sort of a sample of a data fetching, even if we are not going to fetch the data, but we're just going to use a React hook, which is use effect. Okay, so you use this use effect whenever you want to some sort of simulate a form load event. What do I mean by a form load event? When your screen or with the page is first rendered, okay, meaning that when it loads, okay, as you know that when the form or when the page load, some cases you need to fetch data from the database and look through it and then display, so that when the page loads, it's populated with the data. So you will use the use effect and you will pass this empty array so that it can act as a form load, meaning that when this page loads for the first time, so that means we need to import this use effect from React. Yes, okay, so what is the problem now? Is called in a function page. Okay, this just means we need to put a capital letter here. Okay, and that's about it. So as you can see, when this page load, we can put all the information for fetching, sort of all the code that is needed for fetching data here. Okay, let's assume that this function fetch data is going to fetch data. So let's just declare this function, let's say fetch data. Okay, fetch data. Let's assume that this function is going to fetch data from the API, and then let's call it here. Okay, let's call the function here. So meaning that when this page loads, this code is going to be executed once at the first when it's load, and then this function is going to be called, which is called fetch data, and then it's going to fetch data from the API. It might get the data that we want, it might return null. When it has got the data that we want, what we need to do in order to access the data that we have received, we must use another hook, which is use state. Okay, then let's say const, okay, let's say data, that means from the API, and then set data is equal to use state. Okay, let's import this hook. Okay, use state. So the use state cannot be called. Okay, just made a mistake here. Use state is supposed to be called here. Okay, so now this means that when we are setting, okay, that means we can set the data that we got from the API. For now, let's set it to null. Okay, assuming that when we were fetching this data here from the API, something happened, meaning that we got null. Let's see what TypeScript is complaining about. Argument of type null is not assignable to a parameter of type. Okay, meaning that this type, okay, it's a data type for the set data, okay, meaning that, sorry, for the use state, okay, that's the type for the use state. So what we need to do, we need, for instance, let's say when we are receiving the data from this, okay, once we say set data, it means that we are taking this null and we are assigning this null to this variable. Okay, let me just be slow a little bit so that I can give you the context of what's going on. We are declaring a variable here, just a container to store data, but we are using a hook. So meaning that this use state hook, what it does, it declares two variables at the same time. It declares a variable data and a function set data. Whenever you use this function set data, you put whatever you want here. For instance, let's say we can put a string. Okay, this string is going to be assigned automatically to this variable. Okay, let me display that here. Okay, let me just I am a child, let me just display that here. We are going to display the data that has been set here. We are going to display it here. So I hope you get the idea of data and set data. Data is just a normal variable. Set data is a function that when you've used it and you pass anything, it will be inside here. And then we are using this hook to achieve that. We are loading when the page first load, and then we are fetching data from the API, and we have received this data. Now this data, we have received it as null. Okay, now obviously this is TypeScript. Obviously we are asking ourselves, if we are using a variable here, what is the data type of that variable? As you can see, at this point in time, it's undefined because we didn't set. Okay, how does this hook work? Sometimes when you pass something which is a string, TypeScript will infer the type, meaning that it will pick up from what you have put inside and it will declare this as a string. As you can see, what if maybe we can put an array here? Okay, as you can see now, TypeScript has noticed that this is an array, but it's an array of never. Well, it's tolerant, it accepts us, but we don't want to use an array of never. Okay, so now let's check on this error. How does it change as we change the information that we put here? Argument of type null is not assignable to a parameter of type. Please ignore this for now. Okay, let me say, please ignore this part for now, the set state, whatever, but just look at this never. If we make this a string, let's look what is inside that part where there was never. Argument of type null is not assignable to a parameter of type. Can you see that now there is a string? So meaning that there is a relationship between this part and this part as a set function. In a way, there must be some sort of consistency in terms of types. I hope you get that. Let's go back to the problem that we had. When we fetch data from the API, maybe the internet might just get stuck or get lost. We will return null. So meaning that we might have an object that we want to a type, okay, that we want to receive, okay, which is the type that we want to receive. It's a JSON object in this form. Let's say received data. Okay, we are just fetching the employee name. Let me just say emp name. We are just fetching emp name as a string, or emp ID and employee ID and emp ID, and that is all. Let me just make it a number. Okay, and that is it. As you can see, there are two possibilities. We can get this type or this shape, okay, of data from the API. But if there is a problem because we are not in control of the internet connection, maybe sometimes the user might switch off the internet deliberately, meaning that the fetch function will return null, okay, meaning that we cannot predict the data type beforehand. It's like it will depend, we will see it in the future, let me put it that way. So let's first take the data which is within the possibilities, okay. That means we can first type this, okay. We can first type this, use state like this. Okay, what do we mean? We are saying that we are expecting this type. Okay, obviously, if we are expecting this type, let's see what TypeScript is complaining. TypeScript is saying, obviously, null doesn't conform to receive data. Okay, automatically it put undefined there. That's not what we want. Us, we want this data. Okay, the structure of this to be the correct thing that we have received from the API, or there is a possibility that it can be null or undefined. Okay, for now let's just use null, or in fact undefined is the what's it, the ideal one, okay, the ideal type. Okay, and then we can say undefined. Okay, what is this? What have we done here? We have used a union type to solve the problem because we don't know the value or the type beforehand. It will depend on the execution of the API, the function that fetches data from the API. So I mean that it might return undefined or it might return the structure that we want. Okay, so let's explore all the possibilities. Okay, so it means that here we can set this to undefined. As you can see, now TypeScript is happy with this. TypeScript is saying, I understand that you can set this data using this function set data to this structure, or it can be undefined. How does it know that? It knows that using this. So this is a union type. Okay, then the other thing, let's just check here. Okay, obviously we had data here. Okay, now it's telling us that, okay, remember, since there are two possibilities, now we are displaying data here as if we know that is going to be something, of which that's a problem first. Okay, we don't know if it's going to be null or it's not going to be null. Okay, but that's not much of a problem. But now let's read what it said. Type receive data or undefined is not assignable to a React node. This means that if we are going to receive this object, this is an object. This is not how you access an object. Okay, how do you access an object? In that object that is data, you have to say dot. It's either you display an employee name or an employee ID. Okay, my Visual Studio Code is very smart. It has helped me on putting this question mark. Let's delete it and see what will happen. This is telling us that the data that you are receiving, remember, it can be undefined. Is displaying an undefined or displaying undefined to the user the right thing to do? No, it's not the right thing to do. So by putting this question mark, you are saying, from these two possibilities of types, in case we fall into undefined, this question mark will just render an empty string. This question mark will help this. Let's say it will nullify this, let me just say, or it will just render an empty string. It's like destroys everything and put an empty string there because we have received undefined. Okay, in case we receive the data that we want which is this structure, okay, just get the employee name, and that's it. So this is the perfect example of using a union type. As you can see in this video, to be honest, we have tackled two things at the same time. Automatically, I have shown you how to type the use state hook, which, to be honest, in my plan, I thought I was going to do a separate video to show you how to type only the use state. But the use state, it was a perfect scenario for showing you the union type. Hence, I have combined it. So I think I owe you some sort of a revision in a way, just to give you clarity on what is going on, since I feel like I have loaded a lot of things in this code. Okay, so let's just go back. When we are fetching data from the API, this is what we can receive. Let me type it. Okay, we can receive undefined, which is this one, or we can receive the data that we want. Which data that we want? Let's quickly set it here. Okay, let's say we have received Matthew from the API, and the ID number, it's 1988, and this is the ID number. Okay, do you see that we've got two possibilities of types that we can receive, and TypeScript is not complaining. As you can see, in the same set data, which is when we set data, this this data type goes to this variable. Excuse me. This data type goes to this variable. Okay, this is a type. And then if not this one, then it's going to be this one. So observe that there are two possibilities, hence union type. This, the pipe character, meaning that, or this one. I hope that one is clear. So we've got two options. Okay, and then we are coming to set state. A use state, it's a hook. Okay, it's a React hook. Okay, meaning that it has got two variable, declaring two variable at the same time. A variable to holding data and a function to save data into this variable. So whatever that we catch here from the API, we will save it here through this function. As you can see, it's either we're saving undefined or we are saving data, and that's all. Now let's go to the practicality. Let's say we have fetched the data from the API and then we have received undefined. So meaning that we have to comment this one and receive this possibility, which is undefined. Now let's go and check how it looks like. Okay, you are importing a component that uses a use state, so it will work. Okay, that's not a problem. This is Next.js telling us that we need to convert this into a client component, which is Next.js has got a server-side rendering and a client-side rendering. So let's say use client, because we are using React, and also we are using use state, which is available when you are using use client. Okay, as you can see, we've got not a children. Why have we fetched something and we're not displaying it? The problem, whatever that we were displaying, it's undefined. So this question mark has helped us to say that in case it's undefined, render an empty string. Let's remove this question mark and see. If we were using JavaScript, after removing this question mark, the error that we get here, we were going to only see it in production, which is wrong. Okay, according to what can I say, according to pure JavaScript, meaning that we were going to catch this error here. But as you can see, TypeScript is smart. It's telling us that this is a problem because this might be null. Okay, so hence we are putting the question mark. In case it's null, render an empty string. So the only possibility that we have now is when we have received the data. We can only show that when we comment this one and uncomment this one. And remember, what are the intentions of the code when we have received data is to display the employee name. Let's see if we can see the employee name here. Okay, let me just check or refresh. As you can see, here is Matthew. Okay, maybe you might ask why there was a delay. Okay, so this acts as fetching data, or this use effect runs whenever the page is first being rendered. Okay, so it runs there. So that's why there was some sort of a small delay. Okay, it runs before the page has been rendered, and then when it's done running, and then it will display it there. Let's just confirm if for real we are getting the data that we want. This one, let's just say here, say dot employee ID. As you can see, now it's rendering the employee ID. I'm Matthew Singati, the designer and developer. Please support my channel, Coded Design, by just like the video, commenting, or please do me a favor and subscribe. Thank you so much. See you on the next one. I hope you are learning something.